Hi, Susan. Aloha, and welcome to the show.
Aloha. Thank you for having me. I am really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, it's been a while in the making, this one, Susan, but yeah, we have you here today. I'm glad to speak to you finally. Well, before we get into anything, Susan, always great to build a picture for the audience, who you are. You are an emotional intelligence expert in, I believe, in the business sector. Is that correct?
That's what I did prior to coming out to Hawaii. I've been in Hawaii for the last couple of years. And, I had what I call my public life and my private life. They were not necessarily conjoined for obvious reasons. But yeah, publicly, I did emotional intelligence, leadership work, consulting, training. I have a master's degree in organizational behavior. And, some of my clients were Harvard Business School, Yale University, University of Chicago Business School. I've actually taught in your beautiful country of Ireland as well at the Michael Smirke Business School, London Business School. So, yes, I had a professional career doing emotional intelligence work, which is, to me, still such a highly important aspect of our day-to-day consciousness and how we treat each other as human beings. I still do some of that consulting work, although, again, being in Hawaii, my work has been with the Resonance Project Foundation, working with resonant technologies, which is basically new physics and new science.
Sure. I'll definitely go into some of the Resonance Project work that's going on. I'm very excited to talk about that as well, Susan. Susan, for those people that aren't familiar, everybody's going to say I'm emotionally intelligent, but it's a strange concept. Maybe you can just elaborate on what emotional intelligence is, how people react to situations, and give it to us in the psychological perspective.
Sure. Well, basically, emotional intelligence is being able to understand the emotion that you're feeling, know how that emotion is related to your thinking, know how it's related to what's going on in your body, know where the emotion is coming from, and know how to effectively manage, like not to exclude emotion or to fully include it, because sometimes there's wise ways to do that and some very unwise ways to do that. So what we've learned is there's just an incredible host of research that if you can manage emotions well within yourself and within other people, you typically have, I would say higher consciousness, higher awareness, number one. But people like you better. They enjoy being around you. You're typically a better leader. You're more effective. Like you can get people to do things because they want to do them versus because they have to do them. That's actually, quite a big difference. And, people that are more emotionally intelligent, they're more connected in, with the heart and mind. And, I think people that are listening can probably think about partners that they've had in the past or maybe present who don't do such a good job at listening or who shut down or actually become, highly over emotional. And it creates these disconnects. And, to me, what I've seen going on in the world in the last couple of years, it's almost like so much of our ability to remain calm, centered, wise, aware is being quite challenged right now. It seems like the energetics are, really high. There's a lot of disturbances in the electromagnetic fields with a number of different things, whether it be man-made devices or other. And it's challenging us to really be able to manage our stuff right now.
I think that the emotional state of people in an individual basis on how they interact with each other is dire at the moment, Susan. And I also think I think the group perspective or the group mentality, the herd mentality, if you want that, is even worse. Maybe you can talk about both of them. But for example, I watch all this ISIS stuff going on where you have these groups, whoever they are, destroying ancient monuments with bulldozers and lump hammers and machines and just destroying something that's of deep antiquity and precious to the planet. Now, I don't condone it in any way. That makes me upset looking at it. However, I'm looking at people just inciting hatred in one another, and I don't see the benefit of it. I just see people reacting to something they don't understand. And if they're doing that, I don't even think they understand their own emotions, Susan. In a way, and let me just kind of nail it home. I mean, I just think that, there's other groups behind who ISIS really is. And I think that people aren't even looking at that. And what they're doing is, and this is the group mentality that, I think people are being used to react because that's what they do. They're being fed this reaction solution.
Sure. It's like, just to reel back on something, I was talking to somebody that I was really close to, just a few hours ago, and we were talking about 9/11, and I was living in Massachusetts at the time when 9/11 happened. Sure. And, one of the flights was one of the Boston-based flights. And, we talk about that moment of when, 9/11 happened and the towers went down. I'll just say that, that when you start to uncover and you start to find out, who is behind these events and these things are happening, it's like, that was a past event, and, people have some form of level of acceptability that, okay, well, maybe it wasn't the story that we were told, right? And so now you take a present day event that's inciting a very similar type of behavior, right? Very similar type of attitude, maybe even worse and what's going on right now, and putting that out in the public over and over and over. And, obviously you see it on Facebook pages over and over and over. That information is there. So, I think where I would go with this is say, can we be smarter in looking at the past as an indicator to what is actually happening in our present, and to get out of that matrix? Because, I've said this before. I said, once you get out of one matrix, there's usually another one lying right behind it. So, what can we use today for information to get us out of, what we were stuck in the past with? Mm-hmm. So, I'm not sure if that entirely answers your question about ISIS, but I look at everything, that's coming at us with these dramatic scenes and these horrific images. Why? What is that for? Why are we being fed that? Again, let's use the wisdom of what happened in the past to guide us to where we are today, to disconnect, to disengage in some way from a level of objectivity, to say, whoa, what's my stuff? What am I really feeling? What's really going on in my world, versus what's being fed around me?
Not even that. Yeah, well, yeah, that too, Susan. I mean, a great point with the 9/11 thing as well. Personally, I'm the one that should be reacting. I'm obsessed with Sumerian history or anything in the Middle East. I just think that's a fascinating part for me, and I should be one of those guys. Well, I should be. I say I'm not. I'm intelligent to differentiate, why I'm reacting to something and why I shouldn't. And but I see other people perpetuate that stuff on the internet, and I know they're not that angry about it. I know but they're watching the other public react. And I see them perpetuate that. And whether it's an ISIS event or 9/11 or some other reaction to either media stories, I mean, people have this sensationalism that they use. It's a ferocious kind of thing that happens. It's a ferocious thing.
Can you repeat something that you said?
Sure.
Can you, if you remember what you just said, because I want you to repeat it, because I'm going to share a story with you about the images and then people acting them out.
I don't even know what I said. Yeah, this the way they act out on the images. There's a reaction to them. They really perpetuate the stories, and I don't even know if people. There are people that aren't angry about the images, but they perpetuate this because they see other people react.
All right, so I need to share a story with you about something that I was horrified with, right?
Sure.
So last night I'm at dinner. It's a beautiful dinner, wonderful person that I was with, and there's a family that's next to me. There's 4 adults and 3 children, probably between 8 and 15 years old. And the table, I mean, this is a nice restaurant, right? And so it's in Hawaii. You're outside, the palm trees are blowing, right? I mean, setting the stage there's tiki torches in the background. So it's a calm, really beautiful night. So, the family is having a couple of drinks and they're talking about what they would do if there was some type of a terrorist, or some type of a terrorist activity. I mean, the family is talking as if they're going to become under attack, right? Wow. And it gets to a point where the two men at the table become so extreme with their children there, become so extreme with wow. what they're saying that they would do, physically, if this type of attack occurred. And the father went so far as to pretend to have a gun in his hand and point it at his probably 14-year-old son's head. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, these people are in a matrix. They're in a matrix, that they are wow. taking their beautiful time that they have together as a family on a Hawaiian vacation. They weren't from Kauai, you could tell. And this is what they're choosing to have a conversation around. And I mean, literally, I want to say I was horrified, but mm-hmm. I had to get to a point where it was like, okay, give me the bill and let me go, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like, this family, here they are in the middle of Kauai, but they're acting as if they're going to be under attack at some point. And it just goes to show something here. And, hopefully this will lead into more of the discussion on EI and then the ET contact experiences. But it just goes to show that entire conversation with that family was about fear.
Wow.
The whole thing was about the emotion of fear and anger, right? And it's a matrix, and whatever this family is being fed for information, that was the topic of conversation last night. But I can't even imagine, they look like a normal family, whatever normal looks like today, right? Eating at a fairly expensive place, and this was the conversation. So the images that are being fed out there, they drop into people's psyche, and then before you know it, people are behaving and acting in a certain way as if they're under attack.
That's amazing. That's amazing that still goes on. I sometimes think of people and I go, what's in your head? How can you not be awake yet? You're like 30 something years of age. It's like, I think people still act like, I think we come into this world, Susan, like we're emotionally handicapped, and we have to evolve going up the scale until we learn how to deal with our emotions as kids. And hopefully when we get to adolescence, that you become aware of yourself and others around you. And, that doesn't happen to everybody, Susan. It's like if they get stuck in a stasis. Let's bring in. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, there's a stuckiness, a stickiness of the matrix, and I think you're probably going to ask me a little bit more about the ET stuff at this point.
Sure. I want to bring this in too, Susan, and I mean we can talk about the emotional intelligence of what the ETs think of us, but yeah, I mean, let's get into a little bit of your background as an experiencer first. Like I say, I haven't had the experiencer on the show before. I've done shows on some heavy hitting shows, and mostly about anything from Roswell to Phoenix Lights to anything, or ancient aliens. I've had half the cast on the show, and although that's all great, it's nice to talk to somebody today. I've had David Sarita on the show, as you know, just in the prelude, but this is all interesting for me, but I want to know what people think of these ETs, and I haven't had this opportunity. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your experiences. I believe they've been going on for most of your life, and it's like normality for you. So forgive me if I'm not understanding things correctly.
No worries. Okay, well, so yes, you have it pegged quite nicely. I grew up pretty normal. When I say that, I grew up with a wonderful mom and a great dad, and I'm the youngest of 5 in my family. So wow. I grew up in New England and Massachusetts, and my dad worked, my mom worked part of the time. So had a lot of pets growing up. I love my family very much. I'm very, very close to my family and care about them deeply. Well, I tell this story this way. I'm one of, there's more of us walking around on this planet. But I remember incarnating in, I don't remember being born, but I remember literally coming wow. from, what we would call source energy. There was a group of beings that I was with as well. And I basically heard the call to come here. to incarnate in. But I remember coming in, and separating from, this source energy, and separating from, even a group of different beings, and, incarnating into my, where my mother and father were making love, mm-hmm. And incarnating into my mother's womb. I actually remember that. I remember being energy before I was in a physical body, and didn't know that was strange or unusual. It just was, how I came into this world. And remember being in my mother's womb, quite a bit. And my first conscious thought in the womb was, oh man, this place. 'Cause it was loud. It was, again, you got to keep in mind, my family, by the way, is Irish Catholic. So, I'm the youngest of 5, and it was loud. And, I knew that having privacy or quiet time was probably going to be a shot in the dark for me. Sure. So it was, again, just something that I remember. And I guess as a really young child, like younger than 5, I used to tell my brothers that I remember where I came from, and I remember being in mom's womb, and, they would, just joke and laugh at me, but I was like, I could remember hearing you. So I used to tell them that story. But when I was 5 years old is the first time I saw the beings, and the first time I saw the ship, and it didn't feel weird or unusual. It literally felt like, oh, there you guys are. Like I have this, I have this family that I incarnated in with, and there's also this other, deep, eternal part of me that's very active and very much, a part of the reason why I'm on this planet in the first place. So, that was, that started when I was 5, but I had literally been waiting for them. They felt like, the extension of my family, but also that there's work to do. So, I can really clearly say I never felt like I was on this planet to just, be. I've had a mission from day one, and to live my life just like everybody else, and to also,
Sure.
Stay in tuned and stay in contact, and to serve a variety of different purposes, as it relates to the evolution of humanity, and as it relates to the evolution of this planet.
Tell me about the interaction between some of these extraterrestrials entities.
Sure. Well, let me start off by saying this. When I was probably about 5 years old is when I, again, had the first physical contact. My physical body, it was very stimulated. So I was like, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, one morning, and it literally felt like if you can imagine your body like an engine revving up, mm-hmm. Was really how my body felt. And I couldn't, I was laying there, and it wasn't like I could sleep, but it wasn't like I was entirely awake. And I could literally feel like the cells of my body, rev up, separate, not in a bad way, but like in an expansive way. And then the next thing I know, my sister, who was about 10 years older than I am, was at the window. We shared the same bedroom. We had bunk beds. And she says, "Oh my goodness, Susie, what is it?" And as I'm looking out the window, and as she's looking out the window, there's the ship right above the treetops. And the next thing I know, it's literally as if my body starts to like go through the wall, to meet the beings. Wow. And the conscious thought that I had when that was happening, it wasn't so much, oh, this is really scary and weird. It was, oh, this is what this body feels like when it meets this energy. So it was almost like, this is what this human body at 5 years old actually feels like when it's connecting in with this energy. So, it's almost like you're watching it you're experiencing it as an observer, but also a participant as well, if that makes any sense. So, I'll kind of skip forward with a couple of things. Mm-hmm. When I first physically saw the beings, I saw them move in a sacred geometric pattern, across the landscape. So, wow. Did I see them come from the ship and out? No. Again, you've got to remember that, this is in a higher vibrational plane. This is not like, I know that some other contactees will talk about the beings come out in this real, physical sense. Like the ship is almost like what I would call a plasma ship. And the beings can move, at least the ones that I've seen, can move from a plasma state, like a high energy plasma state where they're humanoid, but they don't necessarily have, like skin like we have. Like if you were to imagine like what your etheric or energy body would look like, that's pretty much what the beings look like. And as they moved closer to my density to meet me, they then took on a more humanoid type of form. And again, the key to keep in mind is they used group mind, group think, and moved in a very beautiful geometric pattern. And you know what? I will share a picture with you later, and maybe that's something that you want to throw up that somebody did for me. I finally said, gosh, I've got this vision burned in my head from when I was 5, and it's a really beautiful, memory, and I'd love to be able to have that replicated. So somebody did that for me a couple of months ago. And when they came in to meet me, because they did come into my house, I was a little bit freaked out at that moment because my sister was panicking as well. She was quite nervous, and I actually remember thinking, my goodness, I wish she'd just calm down because there's no reason for her to be scared. But again, like, I can't really say that to her because she's not grasping and understanding, what's happening. And I'm more or less going, oh, here's the extension of family here. And one of the beings came up to me and was probably a little bit taller than I was at 5 years old and touched my hand extremely gently. And we made deep eye contact, and their hand was very soft. I've always described it as like powder-like, like so soft and so gentle. And it was the first time in my physical body, in this human incarnation, that I had that feeling run through my body of deep, eternal love. No ego, no attachment, no condition, just this deep, eternal love. And that is, one of, there's many experiences, but that's just one of them. And, I look at that almost as, they were reminding me of who I am, who they are, and that the feeling of this deep, robust, eternal love is something that, we all have within our capacity.
Wow, Susan, it almost sounds like there's an energetic transfer between, and I mean energy, pure energy, or energy and love at the same time, or is that fair to say?
Yeah, without a doubt, absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
We're just coming up to break, so just for the webpage, you can go to capricornradio.com for the free archives and capricornmembers.com for the HD TV and MP3 archives. But for now, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back in just a moment. There is something majestic in the land of Ireland. This is known the world over. The Celtic Irish are descendants of the Tuatha De Danann, a mysterious, supernatural race of gods written about in ancient Irish Gaelic texts. This is the basis for all Irish mythology, and our megalithic ancestors are interlinked with these peoples. You have a chance to come and see these monuments and temples for yourself. The megalithic landscape is rich in the realms of myth, legend and wisdom. Come see all this on the most spectacular Sacred Sites tour in March 2016. The Sacred Sites and Equinox tour is not to be missed. Tour highlights include Grinning of Ailloch Observatory, the Giant's Ring Henge and Dolmen, St. Patrick's Day Special at St. Patrick's Ancient Chair, March 17th, Knockmany Passage Tomb linked to the Queen Maeve with special access, Beemore Temple Complex, Dunluce Castle, the Giant's Causeway, Beltany Stone Circle, Kilclooney Dolmen, and the Loughcrew Equinox event alignment. Of course, we will see the famous tombs of Newgrange, Noth and Doth, also Fornox Rock Art and Shamanic Chamber, Tara Hill Complex, and we're going to finish at the Tua de Danan's origins in the northwest of Ireland at Carrowkeel, dated 3500 BC, and the famous Carrowmore 5000 BC complex. Check out all the full itinerary on the Tours Events page for more details at jamesswagger.com. Welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your host James, and don't forget to check out the archives at capricornmembers.com. You can subscribe for membership, doing a lifetime membership deal at the moment. And of course you can still check out the free archives at capricornradio.com. And then HDTV shows as well on the Capricorn members page. But for now, why do you feel that you have been visited? Have you been given knowledge? Have you been given intuitive moments? Have you been given abilities? Have you been given anything extracurricular to what normal people would have on the planet?
I don't, that's a really good question. The funny thing is when I actually think in that mode, it stresses me out. Like, meaning when I think that I've got something that is different or unique, or that makes me, stand out, it actually, for me, it moves into the ego realm. Mm-hmm. And what I would say is this, I'd say things come in a variety of different forms, and I'm happy to share what some of those things are, because there's such a wide variety, that whatever I'm tapped into, whoever I am, there's like all of us, we all have a purpose that we're here. I've been able to remote view places in the cosmos. I've worked with a team of scientists at Harvard, the Harvard Smithsonian Observatory, and was able to basically remote view how a universe can condense and form into a new universe. That was information that I was given between 10 and 20 years ago. So I finally, was working with a team of scientists and doing that. I can be extremely intuitive when need be. Mm-hmm. I can be a challenge for people too when they're not being forthright. That's from work situations, it usually gets me, hung up on certain things where that someone's not being forthright on something. They're saying one thing and they're really thinking or feeling something else. Sure. So, the intuition, sometimes the medical intuition piece comes in. Sometimes I know when people are going to be very sick. Sometimes I know when people are going to pass even before they're sick. Wow. There was a time that a very close family member of mine was extremely sick and was literally on their deathbed, and they were involved in a bad car accident, and somehow I don't think I've talked about this one publicly, by the way, somehow my body literally leapt where theirs was and pulled them back to Earth like a magnet. So they were back in their body. And, thank God they're still here because their time wasn't up to go, but they were going. So I've done energetic healings on people, as well. I don't make a business out of it because to me, charging for something like that is just not cool. Sure. So there's a variety of different things. And also, I seem to know about technology, from a really organic standpoint, that is really related to higher consciousness and love. And, not so much from a process standpoint of, let's put X, Y, Z together. It's more, these technologies are going to be coming in on our planet, and the higher consciousness piece is an enormous part of it. So, to me, all these things that I just brought up are something that everybody has the capacity to do. Mm-hmm. I know that the extra sensory and extraordinary abilities, for me, they come in when they're needed. Like, there's a fundamental reason that they're needed. And they come in when it's time. And the best thing that I can do, James, is keep my needle as clean as possible, like I call it, my antenna on my crown chakra, like keep everything as clean as possible, clean food, clean emotion, clean living, and meditation, to be as open as possible for what's coming next.
Sure. I think for the next question, I don't think you even have to be an experiencer to answer this, but what do the ETs think of the state of the planet? Talk about cognition and to have precognition, I think you're going to need to have cognition in the first place. So, and I don't see a lot of people with cognition on this planet at the moment for basic things, and I see it deteriorating. But what does ETs think about? And I think most people could probably think about it because it's their own vision. But what do they think of the state of the planet at the moment, Susan?
Well, I'd be speculating if I thought, what is it that they thought? But what I can say is this is whatever I'm connected to, I'm part of this thing. I'm part of, I feel like, you may have heard people say I'm ground crew, like I live here, I operate in this body, I work, I also have a child, so I do things, just like everybody else. And I'm also connected to something that seems to be very much watching our planet and very much watching humanity. And we are definitely in a super high critical point right now, because even those people that are supposed to be doing good and doing right for our planet are caught up in the same trap that humanity's been in over and over and over, which is money, power, vanity. It goes on and on and on, and we have to get out of this cycle. It's not a guarantee. I know that, some of the light warriors or light workers will say, we've already done it. It's done. I'm sorry, but from my vantage point, it's like, first of all, it's a privilege to be healthy right now. People are getting sick faster. People are losing their shit faster as well. Mm-hmm. And, I know what I'm going through at this point. It's like, it's a challenge to keep everything pulled together and to keep, to stay in your heart. It's not an easy task right now because the mind wants to run in 1,000 different directions, 1,000 different opportunities, 1,000 different people to connect with. What should I be doing? We live in an information age we're full of connections, but the question is, who are we connecting with? Why are we connecting with? And is this aiding in some beneficial way to ourselves and to the people that are around us? So what is it that the beings think? I think at this point, and this is kind of I don't usually make claims. What I would say is this: I think that we're going through this bifurcation right now. And I think that those people that are genuinely living in the heart, that really don't have the ego at play, I think we're all finding each other. We're willing to step aside from, the money aspect that's going to pull us into deeper density. And, if it's going to take our time away from being able to connect in with our higher self, we're not choosing to be a part of it. And I literally see almost like a superhero team that's forming at this point. That's like, okay, these were the quiet people that were staying in the corner that, have gotten screwed over, because people have taken either their money, their job, their creative ideas, and now they're stepping forward And they're stepping forward with integrity. They're stepping forward with truth. And they're stepping forward with a level of humility that we haven't seen on this planet before. So, my energy is not going towards those who are ignorant and those who don't want to learn at this point. My energy is actually going to, those people who embody this light, to become even stronger, because I see that those people taking the next step to go forward from a leadership standpoint and actually driving this thing home. Mm-hmm. And if people want to participate, that's great. If they don't have to. But I do see this bifurcation that's occurring. So, I think what the beings are thinking at this point is, damn, these guys are taking a while collectively to get it. So, let's go forward and let's focus on those that actually, want to embrace, embody a higher way to live and a higher way to be that's in group harmony, cohesion, where people are actually looking out for one another, where the whole, we are one is actually working. It's actually a doable thing and not just a theoretical concept.
Sure. I'm not anti-religion in any way. I've had many ministers on the show as well to talk about all sorts of, and this subject matter too. In terms of religions and ETs, I mean, what can they even be thinking of us in terms of our religions? I mean, I don't see the purpose of religion myself. I see it's a good thing to be a spiritual person, whatever that spirituality be, and I understand why religion's there for some people. But I think religion's perpetuating other groups to do things. I think it's a dogma that's really affecting the root cause of humanity going in the proper way. But I mean, are they going to sit and look at us, going that we're lower evolved because we're religious? Is that fair to say?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I woke up one morning, again, like this stuff just comes in, and when it comes in, you're like, okay, I think this is important. I think I should pay attention to this one. I woke up one morning and I actually made a bumper sticker out of this.
Wow.
When the world's religions dissolve, human beings will evolve. And that's what came in. Again, when the world's religions dissolve, human beings will evolve.
Wow.
So,
I like that one.
What is the point of religion? You're right. There's this strong attachment to. I mean, I see it. I actually try not to chime in on certain boards, but the question of like abortion came up, and this woman says, well, these people that have multiple abortions are going to assume karma. And I'm like, why? How do you know that? Like, why are you the judge of this? And then, you've got other people that say, no, Allah will judge you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, for the love of God, right? Which is really the love of thyself. We continue to disempower. I mean, here's what I know from my recollection of what I believe was coming from source, is that we are our own creators. We are our own judges. And after I used to do hypnotherapy with people, as I started to really understand these deeper energetics, and people would go to their past lives, and they'd go to, even when they were living on different planets or their time in spaceships, believe it or not. And, time and time again, religion was not something that was brought up. It was about the emotional body. It was about that body that transcended, space, time, dimension. And you never heard that piece come up, like, ever. And so I'm sitting here going, okay, I've just, regressed, I don't know, like 50 people in the last 6 months. So the fact that nobody's bringing this up shows me that the emotional body, which is connected to spirit, is the most important thing. And we're, wasting our efforts disempowering ourselves on a day-to-day basis by saying someone is supposed to judge us, and then we'll have to deal with karma, which I do believe in to a degree, but right now the rules have changed significantly on the planet. So to answer your question, to me, religion seems to disempower people as opposed to truly empower the emotional and spiritual self. And I have a really close relationship to Tibetan Buddhism. Mm-hmm. So, to me, Tibetan Buddhism is I would say it's not even really a religion. It's more of a philosophy. It's something, that I use, but don't, judge others and say, well, you're not acting, in a Buddhist way. So therefore you are this or you are that. We really seem to love religion in a way to damn others as opposed to, loving others and loving ourselves. So that's my take on that. And, I don't think that the ETs really give a hoot about it. I think if anything, they're saying, you guys, like, start thinking for yourselves and start to really look at you versus pointing your finger at the other person.
Sure. Well, that's what I was getting at. Is there a judgment there on us? And I guess they're just saying, look, think for yourselves, and everything else will sort itself out. And really, that is true. That is the empowerment. If everybody just thought for themselves in an intellectual way, we wouldn't have half of what goes on the planet.
No.
I say no, that, and I know there's many I think Joe Rogan had talked about what would ETs do, and a comedian, and what ETs would do if they came and we had to try and explain some of our behaviors to them. And I mean, just even sports, what we do with sports, we take a piece of leather, we pump it full of air, and, we throw it around a piece of lawn, and, people bet on this, and it's like, everything would be a curiosity to ETs. Of course it would. I mean, if we were to go to another part of the galaxy and try and look at something, everything would be a curiosity. But I think our human behavior is how do we sort out the important human behavior from the non-important in terms of a ET perspective? I mean, it would be difficult. And I think the point is, if everybody thought for themselves, that is the right way to think about it, I think.
Yeah, and again, James, I think about this for a second. How do I say this? When we go to, because you asked a question about, these extraordinary abilities. To me, the pathway, the gateway to these extraordinary abilities is truly from the heart. When you are operating from the heart, when you really love, something, someone, and you have a sense of altruism, the information opens up. So it's almost like the bigger the heart, the more directed it is, the more potent your capacity to tap into the information that's there. And, talking about like ETs, we think that this is something that's really external or outside of ourselves, when in actuality, there's a really strong chance that they are our makers.
Yeah,
and
sure.
They are the ones that have helped to seed this planet with life. And at least the ones that I've been connected to, I will share this with you. A couple of years ago, people would ask me about negative entities or negative ETs, and it just wasn't my experience. I just didn't have it. And what I would say now is that, yes, I do believe that just like human beings on the planet that do not so great things, you've got other beings that are in the universe that are connected to our planet that are probably not doing some not so great things. But I don't think it's the vast majority that's really the major key here. I think it's a small minority that's had a tight stronghold on this planet that is seriously going to be breaking. It's starting to break, it's starting to crack, but it's going to be breaking even more. And it is my belief that regardless of what, we think, this planet is going to evolve. So again, we're beings that live on a very potent, plane of existence, right?
Sure.
We live on a very potent planet. Like, here when we get, if I go in the ocean, if I go surfing, if those waves are tough one day, like, Mother Earth is speaking, like, I can't change those waves, right?
Sure.
They are what they are. We live in a very potent planet, and this planet in and of itself is going through a huge, significant shift. So, the reality is, if we want to move along, if our spirit and our emotional body that is in this physical, vessel wants to move along with this, then, our best bet is to move with the natural energetics of the earth, which is what the ancients knew. How to do and how to actually move through these changes that were occurring. So, there's a lot that's going on right now. And, one of the things that I think that I would say is, I think the ETs are more related to us than then we make them out to be something that's so far outside of ourselves.
Excellent point, Susan. And yeah, to pick up on that, I think there is a duality out there from good and evil, positive, negative. It's right across the galaxy. I just think duality is a fact of life. You can look at some of the ancient records. There was warmongery going on between ancient gods, if you want to call them that, gods with a small g. Yeah, and it doesn't mean to say that every ET out there is a baddie. Like, I think a lot of people would like us to think that, Susan. I think a lot of people would like to paint that picture, and that's what you see a lot of the movie industry do. Paint this as with again, and it comes down to fear and emotional intelligence, what we talked about at the start, that I don't think some people can differentiate because they're being programmed with a fear-based consciousness. Let's talk about consciousness and evolving consciousness, Susan. I see a direct correlation between planetary deterioration and evolving consciousness. I don't think we could have had this jump in evolving consciousness without some sort of a planetary deterioration, because it's like things have to get bad before they get good. I always believe in that. It's only when an individual hits rock bottom until they realize what's truly important to them, until they really want to put that back together. And I think it's like that, only it's on a global scale now, where how many wars are raging on the planet? Nobody wants the wars. We're not even in control of our governments anymore. What a government's supposed to be. A government's supposed to serve the people, but they're self-serving themselves, and they're perpetuating wars for money and finances, and everybody's so much more aware of this stuff now, especially in the last 20 years. And, I think the internet's played a lot on that, and people have woke up because of false flags, and it's bizarre. There's so many factors to our own evolving consciousness, and I think planetary deterioration is a causing factor. I don't think we need to keep the deterioration going. I think it's time to take stock of things. Where do you see the planet heading, Susan? And in terms of, do you see us really having to put the effort in, or a lot of people are looking for this ET as a savior thing as well? I don't think they would save us. I think they have a standpoint where they kind of want to stand back and watch us do it ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that there's a lot there. I would say, again, the ones that I've been connected to, they have been people talk about like who's been your best teacher, who really is your best teacher. When I say teacher, I don't mean the lesson that you learned. I mean, who would you say you'd go to again? Because sometimes we get lessons, right? And they're horrible. Like to learn the lesson, we've had to go through hell. We had to get dragged. We had to get hurt, whatever the case might be. But when I say, great teachers, I mean this. And again, this is a piece that I want to share. In my contact experiences, the level of gentleness, the level of humility, the level of wisdom, and the level of patience, as well as the level of eternal love, is something that these beings have, right? And in some of my contact experiences where they were showing me things from a cosmological standpoint, and from an earth change standpoint, they wouldn't tell me this is what this is. I would look, and I would ask questions, and I would come up with my own answers, and I would get literally like a nod of a yes or a nod of a no. And, they were all nods of yeses. So I was able to pick up what they were showing me. So, I don't believe that they are going to, come down and save us, so to speak. I think what they're asking, if anything, is for us to be able to connect in to our highest self, because there you'll have the answers. There you'll know if you go left, right, or up, down. And again, when you're operating from the heart, and it takes a while, like, let me give you an example. I haven't had like what I call like the free easy ride, because I've been like ET contact girl, right? I haven't had that. I've been through a lot of significant challenges and understood that, hey, you know what? I'm a being on this planet, and my job is to go through this stuff just like everybody else. And the good news is that I remember where I come from, that all of us actually come from. I just happen to remember a little bit more than most of us, right? Mm-hmm. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't remember as well, because we really all come from the same cosmic soup. It's just some of us, remember a little bit more, and some of us remember less. So, with all that being said, they want us to do this. It's kind of like a really great parent. You want your kids to excel and be happy and then go forth and create their own, right? And that is what they're cheering us on to basically do that. Yet it is definitely a challenge right now in order to make that happen. Yet I will say that I see a crew and I see a team of people that are forming that are embodying all of those amazing characteristics. And I'm also seeing other people that are embodying those characteristics. So, will they save us? I really don't think so. The more that we can connect in with our, natural God-given abilities or source-given abilities, the more that we can successfully navigate out of this. But I'll tell you this, altruism, and genuinely coming from a really low as possible ego standpoint is how we're going to get there. And we do it together. We are far stronger together than we are apart.
Wow. I did a podcast a long time ago on altruism. It's an incredible concept to talk about and to discuss with people. Some people just don't get it. And some people, it is a wonderful thing to see altruism. It's funny because I go through London. I'll be in London later in about 12 hours, but it's only, and I notice this all the time. Every time I go through London, because I live in a very remote part of the country in Ireland. I'm on the coast. I'm 5 miles from the nearest shop. It's a beautiful part of the world. And when I go to London, I'm in a city with 20 million people, and I do this 2-3 times a month. And I go from no people in my life sitting in a room doing shows to having go to tube stations and train stations and just masses of people being ignorant to each other. But you'll see people where a woman's struggling up stairs with a buggy with a baby, and it's only when there's a mass of people and they're looking at each other that they actually pick the buggy up and help the woman up the stairs. And it's bizarre. It's like there has to be a group of people around the situation, or if that woman was going up her stairs, it would be a random person that would maybe come past. But it's funny. I just see altruism, change. You can see it there. The statistics of altruism happening. It's like I think it's the most bizarre thing ever. That there has to be a group of people around before somebody would lift a buggy, because maybe they're too embarrassed, or maybe they're aware of their own masculinity, going, "Oh, I should be helping this woman," because there's other people looking at them. I don't know what it is. I look at the psychology of the situation. Is what I'm trying to say.
No, that's really interesting, because as a kid, I always try to figure out, where does this thing come from. As a kid, I had the hardest time when people would get picked on, like if kids didn't have money, like when I was in elementary school, if kids didn't have money, someone would be picking on them because of the clothes that they wore, right? Mm-hmm. Or if they couldn't afford lunch, someone would be picking on them because they couldn't afford lunch. Like if someone was overweight, then you get like the skinny popular kids picking on. I had such a wild sense of injustice. I mean, I was a skinny kid, a small girl, right? Yeah. And I was like, I would get like, just so fiercely, passionately, in there to stop it, because I would do it. And even as an adult, if I see these things happen, I don't stand by and go, oh, well, it's your dharma. You've called this in. It's like, no, if I see it, I stop it. If I see something, I stop it. So, you bring up an interesting thing that I've kind of wondered, like, maybe it's because we have gotten so far away from our sense of higher consciousness and relationship to source, that if we were closer, we would act, we would step in and we would help. And we become muted in some ways. Like, when I used to do a lot more of the emotional intelligence training, I'd say, it's okay for you to feel something. It's okay for you to feel something, because, so much of our world, it's like, we're regulated. No, you don't feel anything when you're working 9 to 5 in the matrix. You speak from logic. And then when you get home, then you can be emotional. No, and then when you're in this social setting, this is how you're supposed to be. It's like life doesn't work like that. Emotions don't work like that. Nature doesn't work like that. And if we don't have that alignment with nature, then, we're operating in a really contorted type of way. So, kind of just going back to what you're saying, it seems like maybe it takes a group of people because they're not able to get to that deeper connection within themselves unless it's a trigger for one other person that then triggers another thought within the other. So, it just seems like if you had people that were a little bit more connected, then it wouldn't take so many in order to have that altruistic act take place.
Sure. Let's talk about matriarchy and patriarchy. For me, I had Carmen Bolter on the show before, and I was there to talk about Egypt and pyramids. And as a result, if I have somebody's book, I'll read their book before they come on the show. It's just who I am. I enjoy it. But I read her book, Angels and Archetypes, an evolutionary map of feminine consciousness, and I got it at that point, Susan. And I made the mistake of being every other little male on the planet. We're obsessed with histories and humanities, and I'm Cancerian. I do that as a male, Cancerian male anyway. It's, but I didn't get history, and I didn't get why. I never liked from the Romans and after the Romans, or well, probably since Akhenaten anyway in Egypt. But I never liked from the Romans or afterwards all these warmongery civilizations. I liked going back into deep antiquity, and I guess that's probably why I like megalithic history and prehistory, because I find it safer in a way before patriarchy kicked in, I guess. And I just never liked that, and I get the planet now. I get the planet and what's needed, and the difference between matriarchy and patriarchy. So maybe we could talk about that, Susan, and try and finish on that.
Sure. Oh boy. Yeah, so much on that. I've seen more in the last 5 years about the imbalance of these energies with the feminine and the masculine that I actually ever knew existed. I get a really hard dose of that reality, and I can't go into details on that, but let me just clearly say I now understand how tough it is for a female to be able to be seen and treated in a respectful, honorable, and conscious way. And I didn't really grow up with that. My parents, again, were really wonderful. My dad is looked at me like, you can be and do anything. And fortunately, I had a partner very early on in my life that did the same thing as well. And, very, very fortunate to have had those experiences. And again, in the last 5 years, I got a very different dose of a different reality. And, what I know is this. Let me just cut to the chase and make it real simple. We talk about having this male and feminine balance on the planet, like, that this is needed, the rise of the feminine, this is needed. I will tell you something, we are not going to get out of this mess that we're in on the planet unless that male, need to control and dominate lessens, and that the feminine actually rises up and becomes that leader, that visionary, that supporter, that nurturer, that we have embodied within us. That I know beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I'm actually seeing the cracks in this armor right now, big time. Because again, I believe that there's this bifurcation that's going on right now, and where you have this tendency towards, again, money, power, it's, over aggressive, type of behavior, when it's not operating from the heart, it's only going to last so long. The thing is going to cave in and collapse in on itself. So if you look at an organizational structure, you look at a family, you look at a community, a state, whatever type of structure that you want to look at, the ancients, I believe, and I have to make sure my history is accurate on this, but I believe that, originally the Egyptians had it that the feminine was slightly advanced. towards with the male energy, meaning that the male took not a lesser seat, but was in honor of what the female's visions were, and what she was holding, what she was able to see from that leadership perspective. So there was a balance, but there was a slight edge, which is why her left foot stepped forward. When you're looking at you've got that as well.
Yeah, no, as well as that, I think when they have the statues of the man and the woman sitting side by side, she has her arm on his shoulder saying, I'm slightly above you, but it's like a slight edge. That's a nice politically way of putting it, Susan.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing, I live in Hawaii, and the same thing with the heiaus. The female, had, we have a queen that was here, as well. So, the ancients that lived close to nature understood the dynamics of nature, have this balance. And again, we have gotten so far away from that, that until we begin to move this thing back in its rightful balance, we're going to continue to see this craziness occur. And it's only going to go so far. And, people can run away with it. And I'm not talking about that that every female, by the way, is an embodied divine feminine, because, there's females that I know that don't embody that. They run with a higher male energy. However, I'd have to say the vast majority of females that I'm connected to are amazing divine women. Mm-hmm. And, my goodness, they are changing the planet pretty rapidly because of who they are, how they're embodying themselves, and the men that are coming around also, in their divinity. And I'm seeing it with, like a variety of different age groups, but it's coming. It's here. You can see it. And it's starting to infiltrate into other areas. But, you also have, again, those that have the money, those that have the power and the control. It's out of balance.
I got a question. I'm not sure how relevant it is, from the chat room from Celeste. She says, what is your intuitive sense about the trumpet sounds or the global sounds being heard around the world? I guess, is it a cry for help? Is it Gaia a cry for help? I think is the question.
Oh, that, that's a really good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who has heard them, the manner in which they've heard them.
Sure.
The earth does ring. That's for sure. And, a long time ago, I had an experience, and I think I wrote about it on my blog. I used to do a lot more writing. And, when the earth is ringing, then obviously the other planets are hearing it, in the solar system, and then they're hearing it in the galaxy as well. This planet has already gotten its cry out for help when the atomic bomb went off. And we started to, spread some not so nice energy outside the Earth's atmosphere. That's when, this whole thing with extraterrestrials and people incarnating in, just like myself, that have connections with extraterrestrial beings, because we did some not so great things on the planet, and it would continue to have gone in probably even a worse trajectory if you didn't have, people that have a heart awareness and consciousness be able to move into some of these other pockets. Mm-hmm. So, to me, it's not just a cry out for help that was heard back in the 50s.
Sure. I got to mention the Resonance website as well, Susan. How is things at the Resonance project? That's resonance.is, I believe.
Yep. There's definitely a lot of changes going on right now, with the organization, and I can't talk about those publicly yet. I'm sure we'll be releasing some statements for everybody to see. What I will say is that we had a pretty unique environment where you've got independent science and independent research being done in a natural environment. We have a permaculture aspect to what we do that you don't see anywhere. Where do you see independent science that's done in nature with the natural energetics of the earth? It doesn't really exist, right? So we have a really unique environment there, and we also have an academy that's fantastic. We have a host of different contributors on unified science, where we explore the connected universe. So that I anticipate will be growing probably more in the next couple of months. And right now we have tremendous people that are in that program, and it's growing with our delegate base that's in there. So, again, one of the things I'll say is the Resonance Project definitely is a unique concept, and it does seem that there's other organizations similar to what we do that are starting to pop up a little bit more around the globe. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's really exciting because this is where it's at to try to really create different devices and technology and understand and explore science without being directed on exactly how to do it with somebody that doesn't have your best interest in mind or humanity's best interest in mind. The over emotional, and it creates these disconnects. And, to me, what I've seen going on in the world in the last couple of years, it's almost like so much of our ability to remain calm, centered, wise, aware is being quite challenged right now. It seems like the energetics are really high. There's a lot of disturbances in the electromagnetic fields with a number of different things, mm-hmm. Whether it be man-made devices or other. And it's challenging us to really be able to manage our stuff right now.
I think that the emotional state of people in an individual basis on how they interact with each other is dire at the moment, Susan. And I also think, and I think the group perspective or the group mentality, the herd mentality, if you want that, is even worse. Maybe we can talk about both of them. But for example, I watch all this ISIS stuff going on where, you have these groups, whoever they are, destroying ancient monuments with, bulldozers and lump hammers and machines and just, destroying something that's of deep antiquity and precious to the planet. Now,
well, basically emotional intelligence is being able to understand the emotion that you're feeling, know how that emotion is related to your thinking, know how it's related to what's going on in your body, know where the emotion is coming from, and know how to effectively manage, like not to exclude emotion or to fully include it, because sometimes there's wise ways to do that and some very unwise ways to do that. So what we've learned is there's just an incredible host of research that if you can manage emotions well within yourself and within other people, you typically have, I would say higher consciousness, higher awareness, number one. But people like you better. They enjoy being around you. You're typically a better leader. You're more effective. Like you can get people to do things because they want to do them versus because they have to do them. That's actually, quite a big difference. And, people that are more emotionally intelligent, they're more connected in, with the heart and mind. And, I think people that are listening can probably think about partners that they've had in the past or maybe present who don't do such a good job at listening or who shut down or actually become, highly.
I don't condone it in any way. That makes me upset looking at it. However, I'm looking at people just inciting hatred in one another. And, I don't see the benefit of it. I just see people reacting to something they don't understand. And if they're doing that, I don't even think they understand their own emotions, Susan. In a way, and let me just kind of nail it home. I just think that, there's other groups behind who ISIS really is. And I think that people aren't even looking at that. And what they're doing is, and this is the group mentality that, I think people are being used to react because that's what they do. They're being fed this reaction solution.
Sure. It's like, just to reel back on something, I was talking to somebody that I was really close to, just a few hours ago, and we were talking about 9/11. And I was living in Massachusetts at the time when 9/11 happened. Sure. And, one of the flights was one of the Boston-based flights. And, we talk about that moment of when, 9/11 happened and the towers went down. I'll just say that, that when you start to uncover and you start to find out, who is behind.
Hi, Susan. Aloha, and welcome to the show.
Aloha. Thank you for having me. I am really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, it's been a while in the making, this one, Susan, but yeah, we have you here today. I'm glad to speak to you finally. Well, before we get into anything, Susan, always great to build a picture for the audience, who you are. You are an emotional intelligence expert in, I believe, in the business sector. Is that correct?
That's what I did prior to coming out to Hawaii. I've been in Hawaii for the last couple of years. And, I had what I call my public life and my private life. They were not necessarily conjoined for obvious reasons. But yeah, publicly, I did emotional intelligence, leadership work, consulting, training. I have a master's degree in organizational behavior. And, some of my clients were Harvard Business School, Yale University, University of Chicago Business School. I've actually taught in your beautiful country of Ireland as well at the Michael Smirk Business School, London Business School. So, yes, I had a professional career doing emotional intelligence work, which is, to me, still such a highly important aspect of our day-to-day consciousness and how we treat each other as human beings. I still do some of that consulting work, although, again, being in Hawaii, my work has been with the Resonance Project Foundation, working with resonant technologies, which is basically new physics and new science.
Sure. I'll definitely got into some of the Resonance Project work that's going on. I'm very excited to talk about that as well, Susan. Susan, for those people that aren't familiar, everybody's going to say I'm emotionally intelligent, but it's a strange concept. Maybe you can just elaborate on what emotional intelligence is, how people react to situations, and give it to us in the psychological perspective.
Sure.